You're watching Medfield TV.
Okay, well, welcome to the May 14th Board of Selectmen meeting. We'll come to order now. I'd like to make sure everyone here is aware that we are video recording this and streaming it on Medfield TV. So if you do speak, please give us your name and address, and if you are speaking, please make sure you have a microphone so that we can pick up the audio track for the Medfield TV broadcast. Before we start, I still have not, it's interesting how difficult it is to get the names and information of actual service members who are serving our country. So I started this, I just have to start doing more to find that. So for this evening, we're just going to take a moment to remember the service members who are serving in various places throughout the world in defense of our country. Thank you. Okay, and I have one other item of information here in front of me. Sean Dooley has his spring office hours here in Medfield on May 23rd from 10:30 in the morning until 11:30 in the morning, and that will be in the Medfield Town Hall Conference Room. I assume that means the warrant. Yeah, okay. The warrant room down on the first floor right by the front door. So if you want to talk to Sean Dooley about anything, please come and see him at 10:30, or between 10:30 and 11:30 on the morning of May 23rd. The first item that we had has been postponed. We were originally going to talk to the Medfield Garden Club at 7:05. However, they requested that we delay that and talk in a future meeting on that. We have Jean Minio here for a 7:20 appointment, so we have another 15 minutes before we'll start that. I think the first action item we had here was the Board of Selectmen being requested to sign the Municipal Police Training Council .02 exemption for Police Chief Michelle Garrett. And I think that's effectively an administrative
It's
action.
an administrative exemption. Because we've hired Chief Garrett from out of state, then she needs an exemption from the Police Training Council since she did not do her police academy here. But she has spoken with them on several occasions, and it's an administrative issue.
So can I have a motion that we go ahead and sign that?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Carries. Next, I think we have a series of contracts that I need to be authorized to sign. First one, a vote to authorize me to endorse the HPP certification letter dated May 14th, 2019 for the Medfield Meadows project at 41 Dale Street. This has been approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. The decision will be filed with the town clerk on May 10th. So
We've already filed it.
We've already filed it. And that gives us the next year of safe harbor going out through May 9th of 2020. Yes.
So just had one question about this.
Sure.
Has he gone back to Medfield Meadows now as the name of the project?
I believe so.
Because he had changed it to Medfield Green at one point.
I think it's back to Medfield.
He's decided that the statute of limitations on outrage over the name Medfield Meadows has passed, and so he can go back to his preferred
I will
name.
confirm, but I believe he is back to Medfield.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Next, we have a vote to, again, authorize the chair, me, to endorse the 2019 rents letter for Hillside Village, 80 North Meadows Road, acknowledging that HUD has raised the AMI found in the previously regulatory agreement.
So
So
moved.
this, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go-
This is, so HUD periodically raises the area median income, which in turn will raise the rents. And we were just commenting before, the amount of the rents for this is higher than you would expect for an affordable unit.
Okay. So the rents are going up before we've even
Before the-
started.
Yeah. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye. That carries. Next is, again, authorizing me to sign and to endorse the Affordable Fair Housing Marketing Plan for Affordable Units letter for Hillside Village,
The AFHMPA.
acknowledging that the AFHMP, not A, is there an A
Oh,
there?
just the
AFHMP, the
AFHMP.
plan has been approved by the town. The AFHMP has been previously submitted, and this confirmation is a formality.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
The Bruins game is looking better and better as we go. Next, the selectmen are requested to vote to authorize me to endorse the eligibility letter regarding the MHP technical assistance application pertaining to the Rose Bay.
That's Massachusetts Housing Partnership.
Yeah,
I probably should have produced a glossary with our agenda tonight.
yeah, that would have been good.
Yeah. I just have one question about this.
Yes,
Does this mean that he has filed with the ZBA?
we just had notification today.
When did he file?
I'd have to go look at the letter. Yeah,
Okay,
Yep.
so that puts us on the clock
yes.
for the safe harbor. Right.
Yep.
So we should make sure, I mean, we're gonna be on the clock for that before our next meeting.
Yes, this is the first notification DHCD is looking for a comment letter from.
Right, but I think we have 15 days from his filing to decide whether to exercise the safe harbor rights with respect to the project. Right?
Yes, I will confirm that with Sarah.
So we should make sure we have that date down to the extent the chairman wants to schedule a meeting to discuss whether we should exercise our safe harbor rights. We should make sure that we make that decision and not just let it pass because the
Right.
date wasn't brought to our attention. So just under the safe harbor rules, with respect to this project or any project while we're in safe harbor, there's a 15-day period after the applicant files with the ZBA for the Board of Selectmen to decide whether to exercise the safe harbor rights with respect to the project. And so essentially, if we decide we want to exercise the safe harbor rights with respect to this project, we would send a letter or notification to the ZBA telling them exercise the safe harbor rights that we're entitled to under the certification. If we don't utilize that within the first 15 days, then it proceeds as a normal 40B. It would go through the housing appeals process and the control that the town has
I
over.
apologize. I'm 100% incorrect.
Oh.
It's Mayrock that filed with DHCD yesterday.
Ah,
Sorry, I apologize.
so Rose Bay has not filed with
No.
the ZBA.
No.
We can rewind the tape and delete the last 2 minutes, but in general, when they eventually do file, or anybody files with the ZBA under the safe harbor certification, if we want to use the safe harbor rights, we have 15 days to decide whether to use those safe harbor rights after the filing. And then if not, it proceeds as a regular 40B. So,
And that's-
since they have
Yes,
not filed,
they
then.
have not filed,
So
so-
is this Sarah just asking,
She gets ahead,
Proactively
she does
getting ahead of
proactively
this,
get ahead
okay.
of it. Yep.
So let the record reflect that I deeply appreciate that Selectman Marcucci actually understands all the details of this process, because I was having a hard time just following you on what was going on there. I do have one question on this. This is a technical assistance contract for this
Yes.
project? How, because this is Rose Bay, how does, is there anything about this technical assistance project that in any way, shape, or form affects what the design for Rose Bay is? Like, as the last design I've seen is a design that the selectmen have taken issue with. I think it's a design that the people in the neighborhood have an issue with. So there's nothing that we would do by moving ahead with this technical assistance contract that in any way, shape, or form would lock in, make more expensive, or complicate the process of getting to a design that's acceptable to the
No.
town. And there's no commitment. We're not moving any closer to committing to a design that we haven't seen that we find acceptable.
right, so this is standard with almost every 40B. You get, I think it's $10,000.
It's 10,000.
You get $10,000 from the state to hire an engineer or hire whoever you need, really for the ZBA to use in reviewing the project.
Right. My whole question was, given that we don't yet have a design that we've approved, I wanted to make sure this didn't in any way, shape, or form imply that the assistance was for some particular design that maybe we haven't accepted yet.
No.
Okay.
And under our ZBA regulations, the ZBA can require the applicant to pay for their peer review of the applicant's documents as well. So we're pretty well
Okay.
covered in terms of getting expert advice for the ZBA. So I guess my question on this would be, where are we standing with the Rose Bay, where we had an issue with the design of it? Has any discussion been going on?
Yes. So there was sort of an ad hoc group of a few people. I think you were in it too, weren't you in it, Pete?
Nope.
Oh, I thought you were a part of it. Okay. One or two people from the planning board, one person from the Affordable Housing Trust, Sarah, had been meeting with the developer, with Mr. McMillan, to kind of go over the design and kind of see what they could do around the parameters of the design. The last update we got at our most recent Affordable Housing Trust board meeting, this is get ahead of my selectman report, is that he's making changes to it. That, I mean, the reality is that to serve the population that the building is designed to serve, it has to be a single building. So it can't be designed like Tilden Village simply
Right.
because it's too expensive to have the
Right.
elevator in it.
Yep.
You have to have an elevator. They can't build this kind of housing without an elevator, given that it's for seniors and people with disabilities. But they have made a number of changes to setbacks and all these kind of things to try to lower the height of the building and change the location of it and put in some other landscaping and the rest of it. So we haven't seen the revision yet. From what I understood from the report at the last Affordable Housing Trust Board meeting is that within the parameters of what they have made some progress, and there's going to be a revised design for people to look at some point.
Still looks like it's a 3-story building, though?
It's still a 3-story building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's too bad.
Yeah. I think it's just a function of you couldn't do otherwise. So,
Okay.
as he says, now maybe somebody could design it differently to make it more spread out and still have elevators and all of that. But his view is that given the restrictions and given what the state will fund, because this is premised on getting state tax credits, so he's got to meet the state.
So is
Interest.
Well, this is premature to get into this, but
Yeah.
in my superficial understanding of this, it strikes me a 3-story building's a non-starter. But I would listen to you if I'm missing that, but just listening to the people in the neighborhood and just kind of using common sense, it would seem to me it is not appropriate there. On the other hand, if the issue is tax credits, then the question is, should we be looking at the political side of this to give him some relief on that? We don't need to discuss this now because we don't have anything to discuss.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda either. So, yeah, I mean, I would say the tax credits are, it's a state program.
Mhm.
And I think, I don't know that we have any ability to influence, the state their interest is to maximize the number of units they're producing for people who are elderly and who have disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't imagine, I think that's probably how they're going to allocate the tax credits in terms of what they do, so.
All right, we'll see where that goes.
I'd move to vote to authorize the chair to endorse the eligibility letter regarding the Mass Housing Partnership Technical Assistance application pertaining to the Rose Bay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Let's see. Got a few minutes. How fast can we go? Let's get. Okay, let's get Mo up here and see if we can get through these. Yeah, I think we probably.
I'm gonna go on the record, this is a bad choice. For
won't-
Gene.
He won't get snagged up until the last one with me, so I think he's okay. Okay,
Thanks, Chief.
so first one, Chapter 90, final report for engineering Main Street reimbursement, amount of $17,100.
All these Chapter 90 reimbursements, they're final reports from projects that we already accomplished. They're just the residual from the projects that we're trying to get back into the mainstream so we can use it for projects this year.
Yep.
Is it always a set reimbursement on the Chapter 90?
We get a certain amount allotment every year, and when we go for projects, depending on the project, if we have a $100,000 project, we only spend 85,000 of it. The 15 goes back into the.
So the amounts that
Large
you're
fund.
getting on this allocation, you make up the amounts, you just sort of allocate your Chapter 90 amount?
Right, I
amounts
put a
around?
contingency on projects, and then whatever we don't use, we try to save as much as we can during the project, but we have to have contingencies in there to make sure we have enough money to pay for the project. Some of these, the 96,000 and the 90,000 of what we paid the contractor, so it's really the residual from the original request. So that's not the money that's coming back to us. The 17,100 is, the 10,292, and then the residuals from those other two projects.
And then the amount that we get from Chapter 90, it's always just a set percentage based on
It's
our
around 400
population or something?
It's about our accepted roadways.
Yeah.
Whatever we have for mileage or accepted roadways, the state gives us, there's a formula that they use to deduct how much money they would give us.
Oh, so we should figure out some way to have more accepted roadways.
We did find a good amount of roadways last year that we put into it, so we should see that in the next year.
All those roads up at the state hospital, we could add those, and then there's a long one that goes down to the point, and
Pete's driveway, we could make a
There
turnaround.
you go.
you could, it's big enough.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I move that we sign.
Okay.
Second.
The first one, all those in favor of the first one, 17,100?
Aye.
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 Okay, that's approved. Next one,
Do you want to move these all together, Gus?
no, well, you can do the first three.
I'd
I have
move
a
the first
question on the
three.
fourth one.
I'd move the first three then.
Okay.
The three, chapter
The
90,
first three listed, it's. no,
Phillips
this-
Street, North Street, and Causeway.
Yeah, not Causeway. I have a question on Causeway.
Oh, okay.
So the first three on the list.
So why don't you have, well,
We already approved the first one. Chapter 90 is approved. We have,
Why don't you ask your question when you have your question on them?
okay.
Do them all
So
together.
if we go down to the third one, which is the Causeway resurfacing,
Mhm.
pretty simple. The total amount is $96,057.31. The check is 120, there's actually two checks, but the one that caught my attention was the $123,000 check on a $96,000. And then there's actually another, I assume the $1,500 check somehow or another relates to police details.
Right, I don't know the 123,000, can I take a look at that?
Neither do I.
The project was for 113,000. And this might be part from the 50,000 that was in in our budget. So it didn't come out of chapter 9. So we paid some of the funds from our,
Okay.
capital, the $50,000 from capital.
So this was for more than just the Causeway project.
Well,
Or it's-
the Causeway
You
project
funded,
is-
yeah, you funded Causeway from capital and from chapter 90.
Correct. So it's actually the Main Street project from
Okay.
Causeway to the Millerstown line. That was the
Okay.
project.
So, okay, so the only part we're approving is the 96,000, but the actual check is showing a bigger number because
Correct.
it covered more.
But from chapter 90, that's where we got from.
Okay, and then that 1,500, I guess the 1,500 doesn't have anything to do with the 96,000, probably.
That's probably incorporated into the 96,000.
Okay,
so
So
I
we
would
go-
move to, have the selectmen vote to sign all of these.
Second.
all those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Given that the number on the check was bigger.
Right.
I guess we're okay, but, okay. And now the Harvey?
I
contract?
presented this to you probably a couple months ago regarding the recycling contract for the town. This is the contract that would follow it up. $70 a ton for recyclables, which we're, average to below for our price range. So we feel we have a pretty decent deal for this for the coming year, but at the end of the year, we'll have to renegotiate another price because the market's just uncertain right now.
So it's not a year-long, it's actually not a year-long contract? or-
It's just to the end of December. We want to keep
Yeah.
a calendar year,
Yeah.
just to keep track of it. But they had guaranteed us that cost until the end of December, and then we'll have to renegotiate to see what we can get and see what the market does at the time.
Okay. Motion to approve that contract?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's approved. I may have to discontinue you there and turn the floor over for Jean.
So I'm here to follow up on some information we sent around the idea of creative placemaking at the state hospital, which should be some cultural programming on the outdoor spaces. I don't think I have to go into each of the things, but essentially the town got a technical assistance grant from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, excuse me. And we convened an advisory committee to think about what that might be, and we came up with this signature event, which was the idea of a porch fest, which, whether it uses the porches or not, the idea is a sequential performance that would happen over a couple of hours, where the audience moves through the space to experience different performance. Again, some might be music, there might be a dramatic performance, there might be poetry reading or spoken word. Given the scale of what that would entail, we decided to push the date off to May of next year, which would correspond with Art Week, which is a statewide initiative that we'd like to incorporate or be part of. Like Franklin already is offering 25 to 30 events during that week. We just want to get on board to get some of the publicity. So the other idea that developed out of that was, if this is planning a year out, we'd like to implement some smaller scale projects that would sort of help us with the logistics of what the bigger project is going to entail. So the first idea was this Dad's Brass Band on Father's Day weekend on Saturday afternoon. We'd have some family-friendly other lawn games and checkers, things like that, that would be part of the afternoon. And then some of the other ideas were, besides having like an event that's scheduled in a short duration, is to have some other short-term projects that might be installed for a couple of months, like on the fence if there was a public art installation or a poetry project that might be up, say, through the winter, so that people who are coming to the property, not necessarily for a performance, but to come to walk their dogs or go to the park, would have an opportunity to discover something else about the property. So that's the series that we proposed to you. We brought that before the Buildings and Grounds Committee on May 1st. They recommended that it proceed for discussion with you all. So I can answer any questions you have about that.
So my main question is sort of what you're asking us to approve. You know, are you looking for a license to use the state hospital for these events? Are you looking for kind of a conceptual okay?
What we
I guess
actually
that's
need.
what, I mean, all of this seemed fine,
Yep.
but typically we've had kind of a license agreement for these events and spelling out what's gonna happen.
Okay.
And again, I don't know that we need to charge because it'd be a public event, not a private event. So I think
Right.
I don't know that we need to charge the usual rate for it, but that's my question. So what do you want from us?
Right. Well, we wanted approval to move forward with the planning on these events as we've outlined for the
I
following
think
year.
that each of them are probably gonna need, from my perspective, a little more detail than what's in this memo.
Okay.
That can be spelled out in the license as to exactly what's gonna happen, the hours you're gonna be there, everything else, because presumably that would exclude other people from using it on those particular days if there was a different event. So I think more, from my perspective, I have no objection to any of it. Just kind of what the specifics would be, who would the actual entity is licensed, is this a town-sponsored event? Is this gonna be sponsored by the Cultural Alliance, such that it's a
Right.
license with the Cultural Alliance to use the hospital? Those are the kind of
Okay.
questions I had around exactly what it's being used for, when, who's in charge, all that.
Okay. I guess I don't know the answer. I'll have to
Well,
talk to you and
I think
Sarah
we
about it.
talked a little bit about it at the Building and Grounds Committee meeting, is that the town was co-sponsor of the technical assistance application, so we were considering it to be a town event. At least that's how Building and Grounds was looking at it. That even though it was with the Cultural Alliance, that
But
it was
we're the
really-
partner in being able to provide the programming and some of the
and we're
planning.
providing the space.
Yeah, and then, again, I
Yeah.
have no objection to
Yeah.
that, it's just that, to get those kind of details spelled out of
Okay.
who, what insurance is covering it, and
Mhm.
who's gonna decide who gets to go there, who's gonna decide which bands get to play, who's gonna decide which food trucks come in, you know, all of that stuff, who's managing the process.
I like grilled cheese.
all of that.
Well, for the first event, which is that Dad's Brass Band on Saturday, June 15th, that's the one we'd need to move forward with very quickly. We were looking at a 1 to 4 in the afternoon. I confirmed with John that it's available, that there isn't another application for use that day. The idea is they'd perform outside the chapel overlooking the lawn, on the bigger lawn, and use the roadway that's right around it for some of these games and a food truck if we could get one.
Mhm. Yeah, all that sounds fine to me. I mean, I think we just need to have the specifics of what
Yeah, so if you
what
want to
exactly it is we're approving.
If you want to approve the date going forward, then we can look at a license agreement, so Jean can at least start advertising.
Yeah. And maybe we don't even need one if it's gonna be a town-sponsored event, just so we know
Mhm.
what it is we're doing.
Well, Mo was at the Building and Grounds Committee meeting and sits on the committee, so that shouldn't be an issue.
So,
I'll follow up with you this week. Okay.
I think this is a wonderful thing, so thank you and your group for doing this, sponsoring it, and putting it forward for the town. I think it'll make I think they'll be very interesting events, and so that I'm looking forward to them. I did have, and I thought that Mike's issues were good ones to raise and to get answers to. I guess what I'm wondering about is, do we have liability insurance?
We do have insurance on the property.
We have liability,
Mhm.
so if somebody gets injured, we're
Mhm.
covered at this point.
And you've,
Again, this would be a classic, if you're not charging a fee, it comes under the recreational use, so there's
Yeah.
minimal liability.
But do we have insurance coverage for it?
Yeah.
The town
Yeah.
has insurance, and I'm guessing under these circumstances, you wouldn't be requiring,
Certificate of
clients
insurance?
to get their own insurance, because
No.
that's an expense item,
Yeah.
significant expense.
Right, right. Unless the user, unless the Cultural Alliance or somebody else has a liability policy already, probably not.
But if the town's sponsoring it, it should come under the town.
it should come under our policy, and it's the same policy, we just renewed it at the last meeting, it's the same policy we used when we were filming the movie up there, so it should be a similar
Yeah.
thing.
I'm just, wasn't sure that had liability, but I guess it does have
That was
liability
the
coverage.
major driver, was
Yep, good,
liability,
good.
public liability.
Okay. So I think it's a great idea. I would actually move that, I've heard enough about the June 15 date to move that we approve that date.
So I'm comfortable with the approval of the June 15th date, but I've got a bunch of comments. So you got 2 out of 3, but you're gonna have to get past the third one here. If we want to just, from the standpoint of approving the June 15th date, I'm fine with that as well. So do you want to just simply get that one piece out of the way so that from a schedule standpoint, you're,
Thank you.
okay?
I mean, I think that's the only thing that's potentially before us to approve anyway. I mean, everything else is gonna be subject to whatever gets worked out.
But at least you're here, and I'd like to give
Yeah.
you some feedback.
Sure.
So, okay. So have a you moved?
I did make that motion.
I second.
All those in favor?
Yep.
Aye. Aye. Okay, so we're good on the June 15th. Now, do you have a copy of this with you there? I hope it's in front of you.
Yes.
Okay. One general comment I'd make is I think it would be good for you to meet with the State Hospital Development Committee and present this to, this big picture to them as well, because as I went through this, the concern that I had, not that I saw anything alarming, but what I'm concerned about is that whatever we do by way of placemaking and whatever kind of messages we're sending around placemaking is supportive of the direction that we're going with the development of the property and supportive of the timing of that direction. So a piece of me said, it's hard to sign in for all this until we kind of have some indication from the town through probably the zoning change that they like the master plan, they like where we're going, and that's probably gonna happen in the fall. So that's the biggest issue I had. There were a few specific things in here that I just, again, trying to map this stuff onto ultimate redevelopment of the property, I just found myself saying, I don't know if we're cross-threaded or not. So
Okay.
on the first page, it talks about the development of early development of the community gardens should occur, and I'm sitting there saying, what community gardens, where are they? And is that a good idea when we know that at some point it's gonna be a construction site? So I didn't
So
know if it was
that-
south of Hospital
Yeah,
Road
that
or,
section is from the master plan,
okay,
so that this creative placemaking's been thought out in terms of the master plan proposal that
mhm,
was submitted last August to the town. So that section is what the master plan was suggesting. We're not
Okay.
suggesting that we're implementing community gardens
Oh.
as part of this year of programming.
okay, well, that's, okay,
I
good.
wanted to give you
So
the
this is
context
this
of
is
how
just
the
taken
master
from,
plan
oh,
thought
okay, I
about
get it,
creative
okay, so
placemaking
that's just a reference.
by the water tower.
On page 143.
Yeah.
Okay. Then under creative placemaking, most of my comments had to do with the fact that, like, for instance, the first bullet, we're doing things to integrate arts into revitalization strategies. And I said, well, we don't have those strategies yet in terms of practical approval. So that was the reaction.
Okay.
It says, on the second bullet, it talks about including civic and social activities in the public realm that are supported by individuals along with public and private sector support. And so, again, it's like we haven't had any discussions about public sector support. And as I was reading this, I was thinking you were looking for a broad endorsement of what you've got here. And my only point there is, I think at some point in this process, we probably will be discussing how the town can support what we want to have done up there, but there's no commitment to that. But the fact that it called it out, I paid attention to that.
Well, I mean, we have also applied to the Cultural Council for the June 15th event.
Yeah.
So that would be a consideration of public support.
Okay. I just was making sure we weren't putting stuff in our budget.
Yep.
Third bullet, to achieve the vision, the focus needs to be on both placemaking and redevelopment. I guess I put a question mark there, and the reason I put the question mark there is I'm thinking, well, we don't know for sure what the town is approving by way of redevelopment, and it would almost be like you kind of need to know what the redevelopment is, at least where what it's broadly trying to go to before you could have a fully informed placemaking. This is just me talking. I may not know what I'm talking about here. Before you can have a fully informed, appropriate placemaking activity, it seemed to me you'd kind of need to know what the redevelopment direction was. I understand what the master plan,
Yeah.
but we don't have an official approval of the master plan yet. So I'm being sensitive to the fact that if we get pushback, we may wind up with something modified if we get pushback from the taxpayers. And it's an editorial comment, I
Okay.
guess.
Well, I guess what I would say is the creative placemaking isn't a prescribed thing. It's more of an iterative process. So
Okay,
it may evolve from what we've presented. It may
okay.
even back off from some of it.
Okay. On the second page, it was a comment on the second bullet under planning to date. Goals include connectedness, discovery, and creating a destination. And I wrote down, I don't see how this is integrated with the commercial development process. So my point there is, that's why I'd like you to talk to the development committee. They're not in the details of the plans for the redevelopment process, but I saw those as kind of being placemaking objectives without necessarily seeing how they were connected to what our development objectives might be.
You're correct in that they were the placemaking objectives
Okay.
for what we wanted to achieve in terms of how it informed the kinds of activities we landed on
Okay,
in the proposal.
okay. And, as an aside, the reason I pay any attention to that, I'm very sensitive to expectations that we set with the public about what we're going to do up there before we have the hard economic side of it covered. So I don't want to make it look like it's Medfield's version of Disney World and then find out that it's actually a regional truck term. And anybody out there listening to this, don't get scared. You know what I'm getting at is that, the balance is actually going to go in a different direction than the fun dog walking, chess playing, music playing place that we thought it was going to be when we went to the placemaking. And it's an expectation management issue that I'm sensitive to. It's not that I don't appreciate what you're trying to do here. It's just, okay. Next bullet, values include participatory, inclusive, joy, positivity, respect for place. I'll tell you what I wrote there, but don't take it seriously. I just said, this isn't a new toy. So
What do you mean by that, Gus?
I mean, it's not just, it has to have some sort of a message to it that helps people understand what we think the property is going to be. It's not merely going to be this is a great place to go and have good times that doesn't somehow or another help people better understand what the property is ultimately going to be.
I think we're talking about a cultural piece of the property. And as I see the
Okay.
creative placemaking, it's related to that and
Oh,
towards the
okay.
cultural initiative with the
Okay,
chapel and the infirmary and
Okay.
bringing music and a cultural element within the master plan.
Okay.
Or within the development that may come.
okay, but I take that back. I had, with some of the things you had planned that were using all the buildings, I was thinking placemaking meant the state hospital campus in its entirety. If what you're saying is this is a way to start to build interest and enthusiasm for the cultural stuff, then
Yeah.
then you've allayed my fears.
Okay.
Okay. Next, let's see how many of these content in one day porch fest. Okay, I think actually given what you just said, some of my comments are no longer relevant. Yeah, so review it with the development committee. On the third page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullets down, September, October, community mosaic making workshop, temporary installation until demolition. And demolition of buildings, demolition of,
So one spot that we were looking at for a mosaic is the ramp that is behind the dining hall
okay,
and adjacent to the
think I know
the
where you.
food prep area, that
Yeah.
building that
Yeah,
is
yeah,
targeted
yep.
as for
Yep.
demolition, as a non-historic structure.
So, okay, so the reason I reacted to that, but I understand, it's just that spot. The reason I reacted is I was sitting there saying, how many years might it be before demolition occurs? And will what you're doing there actually continue to look like a nice thing for the amount of time that it might be sitting there?
Right.
So that's,
That's right, and we've been looking at that building with our architect, and given the grade change on that area of the property, it seems likely that ramp may actually be beneficial to keep,
okay.
even
So-
if the building comes
Okay,
down.
so, okay, so it
maybe
would stay up
longer.
as long as it
Yeah,
is an attractive thing to
and
be
if
there.
it needs to
Okay.
come down, then it comes down.
Okay. I was a little, on two more bullets down, again, September, October, install poetry on boarded windows and doors. The only concern I had about that one was, and I would trust the buildings and grounds people, and especially John Thompson, to know whether this is a good idea or a bad idea, but I'm sitting there thinking, well, gee, if we start putting poetry on the boarded windows, and people then start going and approaching the buildings to read the poetry, and then they start thinking of the buildings being used, does that entice people to start to think, oh, I guess these buildings are more accessible to us than they might have previously? It was a safety issue that I had there just around the concept.
Okay.
And then finally, two more bullets down. I actually like this event. I just want to make sure. This is the November period event with 1890s music, craft cider, apples inside the chapel. I thought it was a great idea, but the only question I had is whether we can run an event, and I think we can, because we've certainly done tours, but given that the chapel will not be a renovated building, we would be attracting people into a building of, in a sense, unspecified safety. So that was, now I'm guessing if it's in the chapel itself, it's a big room. It's not like people are going up into the choir loft and places like that. So I'm assuming we can handle it.
John?
But it just caught my attention as something I was,
Yeah.
okay.
John Thompson and I had that conversation about the Dad's Brass Band in
Yep.
June. Should it be a rainy day? Could we still hold it inside? And he thought that would be fine.
Okay, okay. That's my feedback. The only real substantive thing, I think, coming out of all that, besides just the inputs you're getting, is that I do think it would be a good idea for you to sit
Sure.
down with the development committee and say, look, this is what we're trying to do. Is there anything here that you see complicating your life? And I think they'll probably say no, but I think it would be useful for them to hear what you have in mind and just to be
Is
aware.
their next meeting with you on the 28th? Are they meeting
off the top-
outside of that?
No, it should be toward the end. It's the end, it's usually Wednesdays, and it's usually,
Well,
they're
you're
coming
having a
here,
joint
they're
meeting
coming here
with
on the
them
28th.
next.
So
Yeah.
so the next meeting will be the 28th, because they did it to coincide with the presentation here,
Yep.
and they're meeting at 6. So they're gonna meet beforehand,
Okay.
come to the Selectmen's meeting, and I assume we'll be meeting here.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, I'll talk to Todd.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jean.
Could I get permission to have put out a sandwich board for the June event as well?
So moved.
Sure. Second. All those in favor?
Yep.
As long as it has grilled cheese.
Thank you.
Okay. You're back up.
Okay, the roadway plan. This is a proposed 2019 roadway construction plan put together, still in draft mode, but I just wanted to put it out to you to show you what we're planning on doing according to our pavement management plan and the funds that we have available to accomplish it. I am working on a 5-year plan altogether, but I do have some reservations about a 5-year plan, and I'll tell you why. Been doing this quite a while, and I found that with the roadway plans, that a 5-year plan, when you put it out to the public, it hits kind of home because you're doing something in front of someone's property. And I feel that if we put out a 5-year plan, I want to make sure that we get the 5-year plan done. There's too many variables in our job to to accomplish a 5-year plan. Depends on funding, depends on weather. You know, if we have a bad winter, water main breaks. I mean, I had a road this year that fell apart that I have to push up into the program. It's not that we don't want to do it, but there's, like I said, there's a lot of variables that prevent us from doing it. So if you put something on the 4th year and say, we're going to do this roadway on the 4th year, when people see that, oh, great, our road's going to be done, it could be pushed out to the 8th year, depending on what happens. To me, it's a guide for us, and I would have it available if people wanted to see it, but I would hope that we don't publish a 5-year plan only for that reason. I mean, want to be transparent, I understand, but I don't want to put false hopes out and try to explain to people why we're doing what we're doing when, like we're tied down a little bit. Especially with the roadway plan. I've seen it before. I've gotten a lot of calls before why it hasn't just been done, and trying to explain the whole process and trying to explain why we can't do what we're doing. I feel that a 2-year plan is reasonable, but I look to your guidance to if that's acceptable. Like I said, I would have the 5-year plan available, but I just hate to have people's hopes get up to say that we're doing their roadway in front of them and not be able to do it because of certain things that happen and certain things get pushed, such as the bridge project. You know, right now, if we put West Street on for next year, if the bridge project comes, we don't want to do West Street next year because the traffic's going to have to go through there, and we don't want construction on the roadway as well as construction at the bridge. So there's different things that do come up. Even though West Street would be one of the roads that is recommended by the plan.
So I guess here's, and I understand the concern, and here's my pushback to it. I mean,
Yep.
I think you're always going to get people who won't understand whatever provisos or qualifiers you put on it.
Right.
And I get that sort of, if you put on there saying in 2023 you're going to do this road, people will think, well, in 2023 you're going to do this road. When really what you mean is, here's our list of priorities. Assuming nothing else happens, this is how we'll be able to do the roads over the next 5 years. I think just as many people can understand that as well. If you have a plan, this is our plan, this is the target date. Not necessarily this is the date, this is our target date, and you can put on there subject to change based on circumstances, and then you can update it, right? Because, I mean, you get a water main break, it gets bumped. And people can see, and you're probably not going to be bumping the stuff that you're doing this year. You're more likely to bump stuff in the future.
Right.
And so if you can, if it's not too much extra work, and the thing is, I don't want to create extra work for you, but if in other words, if you did that and something gets bumped, and then you can reflect the fact in the plan that's on the website that it's been bumped, if that's not too much extra work, I guess I would err on the side of getting some people misreading a plan
Right.
and getting disappointed because they didn't read what it said, then people sort of completely in the dark about what the plans are, and do you have any plans? I mean, I think this is great, even for, I don't think we've ever gotten anything like this before, even for 1 year ahead. And so this is a huge step in the right direction just on a 1-year plan. And I'm not wedded to a 5-year plan. I mean, under our capital policy, for the funding piece of it, we've got to have a 5 years, how much you intend to devote to this. I don't think it has to be tied to specific streets. So if you think that 2 years or 3 years is a more, you can give a more specific or more accurate plan, I'm fine with that too.
Right.
But I guess I would, if somebody reads it, if the plan says, here's our 5-year target, not a guarantee to happen, subject to events, this may change, this is what we're hoping to do, and they read over all of that, that's kind of on them. Whereas if we haven't given the people that much information, that's more on us. So that's kind of where I would come down. But I don't want to create extra work for you just to update.
No, I mean,
update.
the work is fine. I'm going to create the 5-year plan. It's just that I've seen 3, 4, 5 years out get changed completely every single time.
Yeah.
And that's my only concern. It's the 3, 4th, and 5th year really doesn't become part of the plan anymore. It's just all helter-skelter.
I mean, you could
but I'm
even
still going
put-
to create the 5-year plan.
You can even put that on there.
Yeah.
Here's a 2-year plan. Here's what we're looking to do in years 3 to 5,
Right.
subject to events that happen in the next 2 years.
Right.
And then after you finish the year 1, you update it again, and at least there's some people will have some sense, and we'll have some sense, we'll sort of understand what the big picture is.
Okay.
Recognizing the fact that it's not a guarantee, given that stuff happens and you have to adjust and deal with pressing concerns that might bump some stuff down. So that's just my reaction to that, but.
So as far as the 5-year plan that I'm going to create, I am going to put in capital needs within this plan.
Mhm.
So that's another variable to it.
Yep.
But I want to create something that's reasonable into a capital as well as with Chapter 90 money. So, but this is the format that it'll be in. You do see the repair type, the cost, today's cost of what it is with contingencies. So it gives you a good idea. It could be a little bit higher than what it actually comes out to be, because this is just for scheduling purposes, is not to put out to bid with. And I would go into a deeper estimate for it, so.
So I think this is wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this. It's really refreshing to get it and to see it, and it's the level of planning that I really hope to get for the town. And I guess going back to your issue of the 1-year, 2-year, 5-year plans, I would share with you that I prevailed on your predecessor one year to give me a list of the streets that he was going to work on that summer.
Yep.
And it was just a list of about a dozen streets, and I put it on my blog. And that was the most people that ever looked at my blog, was to see that list of a dozen streets. And so the people are very interested
Right.
in this issue. And so that I guess I would tilt the same way that Mike is tilting, to putting the information out there, telling them, explaining that it's an evergreen plan, that it is going to change every year, so don't count on these out years.
These are our priorities right now as we
These
look
are
at
our, this is what it is, and it's subject to change, and so, don't make your vacation plans based on crack ceiling in 2025. I think people are very hungry for this type of information, and if we have it, I think we might as well give it to them, and shame on them if they don't read all the caveats about the fact that it's very likely to change.
And I do want to mention that there are a lot of these streets are part of our cost-benefit value to the town. So that's where we get the plan from. But we also are looking at, with common sense, if we're, one subdivision, if we have, if we're bringing in a whole crew to come in to do 2 streets out of 3, we're gonna add that 3rd street and do it while they're there. It's gonna it's more cost effective for us to do it.
Yep.
Even if it's not on the plan, so there's some human, interaction with this as well to make it, if we're gonna do, like I said, if we're gonna do West Street Bridge, if that construction's gonna happen next year with the state, we don't wanna be doing construction at the same time. It'll just be, tough with traffic and everything else. So that kind of thing would be pushing, projects off or pushing them forward, depending on what happens. If they were to close the bridge, then that's an ideal time to do the construction, because then you have no traffic, so.
So as just an aside on a different matter, I want to thank
Sure.
you for running that cleanup day for
Oh.
the town.
Yeah.
And for allowing me to get introduced to the pit at Noon Hill Road, and I was amazed to find a broken toilet, a guardrails, 2 guardrails.
Did my guys pick it up for you?
I didn't go back and look. I left it for Bobby and
All
the
right.
rest of the guys there, and I also found a tree down that was blocking Noon Hill Road, and called Chris because it was too heavy for me to move.
No, we want to thank all the volunteers and thank you guys for pitching in. And
That was a great
Christine.
thing to do, so thank you.
we probably collected over 300 bags of trash to the transfer station. We're looking to do more and more, but, we thank the groups that did volunteer, and hopefully we can get more in the future.
So I collected 150th of your bags
There you
then.
go.
The guardrails didn't fit in the bag, though.
Yeah. So a few comments. First, to
Sure.
echo just what I think we're doing here, and what I think the message you can send and that we get, that the townspeople should understand, is that the pavement management plan is a result of a methodical, objective, thoughtful, and thorough assessment of where the greatest needs for improvement of our roads is. So at one level, this plan is reflecting putting our efforts into those parts of the road in town that are most in need of improvement. So
It gives the best benefit to the town.
Right.
So I do have to explain that if your road is the worst one in town, it doesn't mean that's the best bang for the buck for the town.
right,
If it services 5 households for the same money that it would cost us to service 20,000 cars a day,
right,
the value to the town would be different than fixing the worst road in town.
right. So I would hope that the town in general understands that's what you've done, and that part's good. The other thing is, it does allow you to put this kind of a plan together. So I endorse both Mike and Pete's idea that you probably really do want to put out the full plan for people. So putting out a 2-year plan and saying you can have the 5-year plan if you want to dig for it will cause the people who have the most interest in the information in the 5-year plan to dig harder for it and then probably be more aggressive with what they find than if the information is just out there. I take your experience, but
No, I understand.
I think that's a better way to do it. However, there is one thought, I don't know if this is practical or not. As you were talking, I like the idea of making it clear that we're talking target dates for projects, but I would think we could even consider only putting target dates down for what I'm gonna call green zone projects. So I'm using green, yellow, red as a color. So one or 2 years out, there's a set of projects that we are planning to do, and they are at the very top of our list. We'll tell you exactly what the projects are that we have scheduled for year 1, and we tell you what we think the projects are for year 2. If something comes in, and we actually do have to bump something in the near term, well, it'd be the year 2 project that would probably, get pushed out another year, but next year it would still be green zone, but it would be year 2, it wouldn't be scheduled. A yellow zone might be years 3 to 5. So the 5-year plan you're talking about is actually, it doesn't say what's going to happen 3 years out from now. It just says, these are the projects we're planning to get done in the next 3, 4, 3, 4, or 5 years out. And when we get to where they're green, we'll tell you exactly when we're going to do it, but that's the time frame. And then I had a 6 to 10, I don't know what the right time frames are, but I had a 6 to 10, which was the red zone, that says these are projects that are on the radar screen. So if you do have that potholed side street with only 5 of you, well, you want to know, is the town ever going to fix it? And, at least be able to go on and say, yeah, somewhere in the next 10 years, we will, or no, we're not.
If the roadways are the worst road in town, our highway department will be out there
Right.
to do
Right.
improvements until we can fit them into the schedule.
Right. So that's just an idea. I don't know if by softening up the date specificity in years 3 through 5, 6 through 10, or whatever the right time bins are, that might be a way that softens some of that stuff that you'd rather not be nailed down to and held accountable for. Just a thought. A second just suggestion somewhere in the website, I guess, but when you talk about the different kinds of, work you're doing on different roads, it might not be a bad idea, given the early experience you and I had 2 years ago with the Granite Street stuff, to have some sort of key about what this means. So people that say, oh gee, crack seal, they probably understand, but
I
some of
put
the
that
other stuff
into
they won't.
the one of the last newsletters, so I can
Okay.
take that and put it onto the website
Yeah,
as well.
I'm just thinking it might help people know what to expect. And then the third question I had, is there a list for sidewalks?
There's not a list for sidewalks right now. I believe I mentioned that I was looking at doing a sidewalk inventory with showing transitions in ADA compliance and connections of sidewalks. We're going to be working on that plan. Once I get that, then we can incorporate a sidewalk
Okay,
rehab and new sidewalk plan.
okay, so it's not in this plan, but
not in
the
that
long
plan.
range is to build somehow to fold that information in to the plan, a plan like this to let people, because we've got more questions on sidewalks than we have on
Right.
roads.
Right.
So but you're working it,
Yes.
okay. This looks great to me,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Let's see, what do we got next? Did I get everything on the first page? I think I did.
Nope.
right? What didn't I do?
Oh, you don't have the new one. You gotta look at this
I
one.
gotta do it on this page, that's right.
Fire chief,
Let's see. Yeah, Chief Carrico requests Board of Selectmen vote to sign a contract with the Comstar contract. This
So
is the
moved.
Comstar, so moved, second?
So I had one question about it, sorry.
Okay.
And I think it was this one. And I think on the contract itself.
Yes.
It says for the scope of services, it refers to
Attachment 1, it says addendum.
attachment A, and it's addendum 1.
He's changed it. We have a new copy.
Okay,
Yep.
so it will now say addendum 1 or attachment.
Yes.
That was my
Yep.
only question.
Nope, I caught that when I reviewed it. Just to give you a little background on it, so we last bid this contract back in 2005, and we received a 4.5% rate with Comstar. So Chief Carrico rebid it a few months ago. We now have a 4% rate, and we're staying with Comstar. We actually had 3 responses to the RFP, and they were all the same rate. Given that we already have experience and we were happy with the service, he's recommending that we stay with
Okay,
Comstar.
so the financial side of this is it's a percentage of the billings that we do. It's not, there's no, they take a percentage of the
They take a
billings.
percentage, yes. So instead of paying them 4.5, now we'll pay them 4.
Okay.
All
So
right.
it's a half a percentage
Okay.
for us, which is great.
Second?
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye, okay, that passes. Let's see. Next is the contract for the car show.
Yes, you previously approved having the car show on June 23rd, and we were just awaiting payment and insurance, liability insurance information, which we just received last week. So now I have the license agreement for you to officially sign.
I'd move that we've signed the license agreement for the car show.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved, okay. Next, vote to sign the ground lease agreement with the Kingsbury Club for the installation of solar panels on the property.
So, yeah, there's actually 2 that they're out looking for you to sign. One is to confirm your vote to allow the solar panels, is the first one. And the second one is an amendment to the agreement that we had back in September of 2017, where we had an agreement with the tenant, landlord, and lender had an agreement for the loans that were being taken by the tenant. That loan amount has been increased, so we need to sign a new agreement
Okay.
reflecting that increase.
And I need to recuse myself from this.
And Mark, you've looked at these and everything looks okay?
I saw the email correspondence from the attorney.
And I think we,
But you looked at the ground lease and, it's not a ground lease, it's just a
No,
confirmation
it's
of our
just, it's just a
consent.
confirmation that
It's a
we're,
confirmation of our consent under the
Just-
ground, it's not a new lease.
No.
Yeah.
it's just changing the loan amount that they had asked
So
the
these
lender
are
for.
more in the nature
Yeah.
of formality
that's what,
compared to
yeah,
what
okay.
we
Yes.
did before.
Right.
It's required in our lease with them that if they're going to take any loans on the property, that we are notified of them.
That's kind of how I read it. It's just that
Yep.
the wording of legal documents is not always intuitive. Okay. Motion to approve.
So moved.
I second. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
And I just want to just note for Christine and for Gus that maybe over the summer, we could have another Lot 3 meeting about all of this that we talked about in terms of an RFP and everything else for that
Yep.
as well.
Okay.
Just not to lose sight of that with everything else that's going on.
Next item on the agenda, Troop 10 cordially invites the selectmen to attend the Eagle Court of Honor on Saturday, June 8th for Ross Johnson and Gabriel Springer. And I don't think any action's required there so far. I can make the June 8th if you guys are,
I am not available.
you are not. Pete, I don't know, but I think I'm okay on June 8th, so,
I think I am too.
okay, so it's probably Pete and me. Okay. Next item is selectmen are requested to vote to sign Eagle Scout citations for Brian Schubert, Nick Dallianone, and Isaac Popper. Eagle Court of Honor will be held Saturday, May 18th, 2 p.m. at the United Church of Christ. Neither Mike nor I can make it, so Peter's our lone representative. I see 3 certificates in front of us. Motion to sign.
So
Second.
moved.
All those in favor?
All right.
Approved, okay. Next, David Temple, co-chair, Historical Commission requests the selectmen vote to appoint Joseph Opila and Tracy Hogan as full members and Dennis Erickson as an associate member of the Historical Commission.
So moved.
This wasn't in the packet, so I'm just looking.
Yeah, it just came in today.
Okay. Do we know anything about these 2 people? Do you know these? Pete, do you know either
No,
of these
just that-
folks?
That David Temple was recommending them.
Do I know any of them?
Yeah.
I know Tracy Hogan. Opiella is a name that I know, but I think maybe I remember that his wife was very active in the school building or something.
So no reason, no objections to any.
Anyone has any reason to object to the appointment of these two individuals to the Historical Commission, speak now or
forever.
forever hold your peace.
I second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay.
We have to do our due diligence in these appointments, Gus.
Bruins game, Bruins game.
No comment on that.
Okay, so we had three items to talk about. One is, we got a request from Berkshire Hathaway to
Yeah.
sponsor passing out reusable bags at the transfer station. Probably should have brought this up before Mo
I
and
know,
I were-
Mo
you know
just-
where Mo came up.
It's not, Mo just asked me if he was all set, and I said, oh yeah, there's nothing else on there, and I knew this was on there, but he and I have been talking about this. So Berkshire Hathaway had approached the Transfer Station Recycling Committee about handing out the reusable bags at the transfer station. The issue is the bags are marketing materials for Berkshire Hathaway. We have a no solicitation policy at the transfer station. So Mo's initial reaction was to deny the request, and the Transfer Station Recycling Committee had asked that we talk about it with the Board of Selectmen. And Mo came to me last week to talk about whether or not, by saying yes to this, what would it open up, and were there other avenues for Berkshire Hathaway to support the no plastic bags in Medfield rather than at the transfer station? So we're bringing it for your discussion.
So is Berkshire Hathaway just going to have bags that have their name on it, or are they going to have a sign at the transfer station and people dressed up as realtors handing things out?
In their realtor costumes.
I don't know about the costumes, but I know that they were going to have representatives there to hand out the bags.
Sure. You got to grab the microphone. Name, address, and speak away.
Nate Bezanet, 30 Oriole. Just my only comment on that was they could always donate them to the swap, and people could just pick them up from the swap as cast-offs. Because God knows what shows up there, so, you know, you can pick up some good stuff, and people would probably use them. Thanks.
So I guess I personally have sort of a different reaction if it's just bags that are imprinted with some advertising versus if they're signs saying, we're Berkshire Hathaway and we're handing these to you. That seems to be a different level to me that raises some issues that I think I fall in line with Mo on.
It's a slippery slope. I mean, there's other mechanisms, they can make them available at their location, they could make them available at events like Medfield Day, whatever,
Summer concerts might be a good
whatever,
venue.
but once you start allowing stuff to come in there, it's gonna turn into a pick and choose, and that's where it gets problematic. You know, and then you get somebody that wants to hand out, it's a recyclable bag, but it's got some kind of a message on it that not everybody would necessarily agree with, as opposed
Oh,
to,
yeah.
so then you gotta,
Then you can't turn that one down, huh?
right.
Hmm.
So,
So our current policy, strictly applied, allows what? Or disallows what?
We don't allow any commercial
Okay.
to come into the transfer station, and no solicitation at the transfer station.
Okay.
You
Just politicians.
I was just gonna say, you can.
And the Lions Club.
You can, yes, and the Lions.
Well, I was thinking even the Boy Scout Christmas tree pickup, they don't do it the transfer station is kind of a semi-industrial operation. So having lots of people wandering around hawking things is probably not the best idea, even though we have the recycling and the environmental stuff, but having a lot of people wandering around with signs and stuff and handing out while everybody's driving and dumping stuff off is actually not ideal. The Boy Scouts are allowed to put a sign up at the entrance to the transfer station, and we've had other signs up at the entrance to the transfer station, so people see information on the way in. I don't think we've never authorized commercial stuff, although I think College Hunks is probably, somebody had something up there, a while back, but that's the sign policy that we haven't talked
Unauthorized.
about. Yeah, we haven't, I have some stuff for the signage discussion, we just haven't put that on the agenda. So Mark, you're raising a different question. In isolation, my first thought with when Christine and I talked was, gee, if the plastic bag recycling committee wanted to sponsor a reusable bag handout at the transfer station, and the bags they handed out said Berkshire Hathaway on them, so what? But Mark, you're raising a different issue that says, well, if the bags have a commercial message or any message at all from an organization that's not part of the town, that's advocating for something, by allowing that messaging to get inside the transfer station area, we would be hard pressed to prevent.
You have to understand, there's a hierarchy. Commercial speech is the least protected. So once you allow that, you really open yourself up.
Well, I think the greater concern is the pick and choose problem among potential commercial. Right. I mean, this is an innocuous request. It's a little promotion. It's helpful, but it is designed to promote the business. And so I think drawing that sharper line between commercial and then really activities like the politicians would have you that are protected by the First Amendment. I think we should stick to that line. It's not because this is a bad request, but then you sort of get the next step. Okay, it's the bags, and it's something else, and it's somebody else, and then it becomes like every weekend somebody, because it's a captive audience. There's a lot of people there, but I think there's a good reason to have a no solicitation policy for that very reason, because it's a great place to solicit. But at the same time, it is a semi-industrial. It's a place of business, as Tony Soprano would say.
It's a valid public safety issue.
Yeah.
We've had accidents. We've had people injured down there from vehicles and all.
Yeah.
Okay, you've convinced me we don't want to do it.
You've convinced me that it's a commercial opportunity for the town to start selling.
That's true. One-day solicitation permits at this. But they can put them out elsewhere. I mean,
Yes, and I'll work with, I actually have a meeting with Megan Sullivan on Friday, so I'll work with her about accepting the offer, but not doing it at the
and to
transfer station.
Brother Bazinet's suggestion over there, I don't know that you can stop them from dumping a bunch of them off
They
the
would like
swap
to leave
area.
them at the swap.
So.
Right, okay. Next one is the car wash policy. So the context of that is we have forever allowed the various athletic teams and I guess at the high school to run car washes to raise money for various things that they wanted to do it. This past year, we approved the UCC's youth group that was raising money for their mission trip. And we've gone ahead and allowed that car wash to take place. And then more recently, we've had a request for a car wash, which is really intended to raise money. It's charitable purpose, but it's actually raising money for a charitable organization having nothing to do with the town. So we suddenly realized, or at least I think, Mike, you might have been in front of this on the UCC request. I didn't even think twice about that one, but actually I think it's a legitimate issue. Where do we draw the line on who can and who can't wash cars at the back of the town hall to raise money? And then I think there's one other minor practical issue there, which is technically because they're using the water at the town hall and they're not, that's on a town hall meter. Technically, whatever car washes we run out behind the town hall are being subsidized to some nominal degree by the water that the town hall gets charged that is used for the car wash. So that's in practical terms it's minor, in legal terms perhaps it's not.
My biggest issue, frankly, was historically they've been either in the spring or the fall, but they have them in an area, have them fall with a period when you've got a conservation restriction in place.
Yep.
That's problematic to me.
Right.
Because one of the specific prohibitions is on outdoor washing of cars, among other things. At least allow it or not allow it when the conservation measures are in place.
I mean, my view, which I had expressed the last time, I think we should limit it to whether it's school groups or specific town groups. And I don't know that there's an analogous group to any of the clubs of the schools. But I suppose if the police union or the fire union or the fire department wanted to do some of car wash, they should probably just do it at the public safety building. But I mean, I think other than those town groups, I think we're on safer ground if we limit it to those. And I think we also ought to pick some number that we're going to allow every year. So it's not an open season to pick dates and say, look, we're going to have 8 dates for car washes, 4 in the fall, 4 in the spring. get your get your requests in. If we have more than them, we'll pick out of a hat who gets them, or we'll rotate year by year. If you don't get it this year, you get it next year, just so we have some limit on how many of them there are. Because I mean, it's a fun thing to do. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's 20 some odd sports teams at the high school, and however many. Because I know the student council does it, and there's other clubs. I mean, you could have lots of them, and then you're in a position of, does everybody try to get their name in? So I would do that, kind of based on the other schedule of what's going on. Christine, if you wanted to pick, I
We
don't
put
know,
together a policy for that.
put together a policy, just and then the list of the dates.
Yep.
When it's reasonable to do, and it's not going to overlap with lots of other stuff going on in the downtown. So, and then just let this people at the school know, if you want to do this, get your name in, and we'll allocate them according to these dates, and then,
We can send it out in the school packet.
yeah.
I was talking with Mo, they cost about $200 a car wash, roughly.
Okay.
Is what he's figuring.
It costs the town $200 to run a car wash?
Minimum billing.
For the water, you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
But we'd be billed that whether the car wash was there or not?
No, we're. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not the minimum,
No,
it's
no,
not
no.
a minimum
No, we
billing,
were
it's-
talking about minimum billing. We were looking at what they would have been charged if they were doing it somewhere outside of the town hall.
Oh,
That like a separate meter.
yeah, so
what
it's
I'm
not
saying.
costing us
Yeah, yeah.
$200, it's,
No,
Yeah.
it's,
You're
although
saying
we
if they had-
anticipate
if they
that
had
there's
a
a
separate
significant.
meter by itself just for car washes, it's minimum billing, because
It's
that's a
minimum
meter charge.
Yeah.
The value of the water they're using is not $200
No.
worth of water.
You could require, for instance, that they have nozzles on the hoses and that they not be left continuously running so the water isn't.
And we recommend that. We also recommend they don't put them in the mailbox out back. We've got a few regulations.
We'll take what we can get on those.
There's this chain that's connected to the building that keeps the nozzle from getting close enough to the mailbox to make it possible.
We don't have a handle on the faucet.
Mhm.
Have to pick up, quote, a faucet key. Because if you left the handle out there, those kids that come with their
Right, sure.
skateboards and whatever,
Yep.
you don't know what mischief they
Right.
cause.
Mhm.
Especially on the weekend.
Those water-powered skateboards are particularly,
Got people down there filling up coolers. I mean, it would be,
get that water balloon on the
Chaos.
back and sit there and shoot off. and
Water
kinda-
and syrup.
Well, that's why we had to put a lock on our dumpster out back.
So just to be clear, and I am not a member of the UCC Church, I am a friend of the UCC Church. We've approved the car wash for them for this year.
I think it already happened.
That's,
Yeah,
did
I
I
think we
already
already
do it?
did it. I think
Oh,
they did it
okay,
a couple weeks ago.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a moot point, okay.
Yep.
Maybe ever since.
Okay, Pete, does the policy that Mike outlined seem reasonable to you?
yeah, I think somebody needs to write it up, and it sounds like Chris is gonna.
I'll
write
work on it.
Yeah.
And I would agree the same way, so,
Yeah, and I think it's a one pager.
yeah.
You know?
Oh, it's
Yeah.
going to be very short.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And we could even throw in a couple winter days to get the salt off if you're really hardy
One pager, minimum one
out
sentence on
there
the
in your
mailbox
skidoo
issue.
suit.
And limit the number, okay. And then finally, the third one, I didn't put this on, but Medfield State Hospital.
I put it on just because we're meeting on this in 2 weeks in case there's anything to discuss, so that it was on the
So
agenda.
this is the development committee?
No, this is just generally, because the meeting's coming up in 2 weeks. The only thing I was going to suggest, not for discussion tonight, just for us to think about, kind of, because I think coming out of the next meeting on this issue, we're not going to have a lot of time to kind of decide what we're doing. And so I think it would be helpful if each of us thought about kind of the decision process and the what's going to be on the warrant at that fall town meeting, and then what the next steps would be depending on the outcome of that town meeting and how we think that plays out. Because there's a number of different ways it could go, and I think we should all think about that, because we'll want to be, when we're framing the warrant for the fall town meeting, we'll want to have in mind what the next steps would be. So I think we all just need to think about that from a technical kind of
So is the
flow
thinking,
chart.
so is the thinking for the fall town meeting to have it be on the zoning for the state hospital?
That's what we ought to think about, and whatever each of our views are on that, and
Okay.
we can talk about what it would be, and then, yes or no, what happens next, and when that next thing happens. So,
And
That's
the
all.
development committee will be able to address the discussions we've had when they come in for the
Mhm.
next meeting, so I'll let them do that.
okay.
Okay. Got it. Next, the fraud risk assessment policy.
Yes, I actually included, Gus and I met today, and he has some changes to the policy. I left it in one of the folders. If you two want to take it, review it, and we can put it on the agenda for finalization next week, 2 weeks.
You have with his changes?
His changes are in there, yep.
I sat down with, because I had a bunch of them, I sat down with Christine.
I think it's in the pending folder.
Pending folder.
Yep.
Do you have a copy for Pete and I? Is that-
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yep. There's one in there for each of you.
Appointments. Licenses pending, there we go. And, you just gave him a copy of what I had?
Yes, what you
Okay,
did.
that's great, okay.
Yep.
And there you go,
Thank you.
and you already have the, did it,
If you, yeah.
it's only my comments, or did you also, is this also something they need?
No, that's the
haven't cha-
original policy. I haven't changed anything.
You haven't changed anything?
No.
Okay, okay. So, and we'll just pick that up?
We'll
next
pick it up
meeting.
on the 28th.
Okay, okay,
You can review the comments, and if anybody has any comments, you want to get them ahead of me, I can
okay.
start to consolidate them.
Licenses and permits. This is the consent calendar. Memorial Day Committee respectfully requests a parade permit and a discharge of firearms permit for Monday, May 27th, 2019. Selectmen are cordially invited to participate in the parade and ceremony. A one-day wine and malt beverage permit is requested by the American Legion for Monday, May 27th, 2019.
That answers my question as to where the Memorial Day parade's gonna end.
Is it going to be at the Legion itself?
Yes.
Oh, they're going to open. Oh.
Yeah, this will be the last year.
Yeah. Selectmen are requested to vote to grant a one-day wine and malt beverage permit for the Kells Beer Company, Thomas Wilbur, manager, for May 18th event, Brew Moon Hike at Rocky Woods Reservation. Christine McHugh, on behalf of the Zulo Gallery, requests permission to post signs promoting the annual Art Festival fundraiser. This year, the event takes place on Friday, June 7th, and is titled Funk Friday Festival. Prior years, this event was held on Saturday. And the Norfolk Hunt Club requests a one-day wine and malt beverage permit for their May 23rd event, Grounds for Celebration fundraiser, that runs from 6:10 to 10 p.m.
I would move everything on the consent calendar.
I second.
Well, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. That's done. Town administrator update.
I actually have a few things to go over with you. As you saw the email from Chief Carrico, Engine 3 caught on fire about a week and a half ago. We currently have a loaner engine that we are paying $1 for. Chief Carrico brought the dollar to the,
I was fascinated that you could
companies.
actually get a loaner fire engine.
He
You've
said
got to have a good
it's-
friend, I
he
think.
said it's worth about $1.
Oh, wow.
We might have overpaid.
He should have negotiated. We did have to insure it for a minimum of $10,000, which we have done. Chief Carrico drove over and got plates, and it was actually on the road today. So, but it's a temporary situation. We will hopefully hear back from the insurance company shortly. But it's our feeling from our off-the-record conversation with him that they are going to total the vehicle. We do not get replacement value of the vehicle, just what it's currently worth. It was refurbished about 20 years ago, so we're not anticipating a huge amount of money coming from that. So that'll be going on the radar of the Capital Budget Committee for June.
Yeah, I'm impressed that we get so many decades out of a fire engine.
Tomorrow, I have a site walk with AT&T, who is now interested in going on the Medfield State Hospital water tank.
That's good news.
So Mo and I will meet with the Water and Sewer Board and take them on a tour of the State Hospital water tank.
Is that going to be a new installation, or are they moving their thing
New
from the other-
installation is
Oh,
what
adding
they're,
a
a
second.
second, yeah. They did not respond to the initial RFP, but are now interested, so.
Which company is that?
AT&T?
Oh, AT&T. Is Verizon already up there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I've scheduled the auditors to come in to our May 28th meeting. We'll meet up here at 6 o'clock with them. I met with the department heads at our newly installed department head meeting last week, and they are all currently working on their goals, both for themselves and the employees in their department. And they should have those two shortly to review, and they're also working on their capital requests for June. DCAM actually reached out to me today. They were in with Leslie. They want to start talking about the location of the roadway. and they're going to come to a Board of Selectmen's meeting to start having that discussion and talk about what their conceptual plans are. So I'm looking at they're going to let me know if they want to come in on the 28th or on June 4th. I thought it might be helpful for them to be here on the 28th to hear what the State Hospital Development Committee is talking about. But obviously scheduling permitting, and we're not sure what level, whether or not it's the commissioner or it's just going to be her staff who attends. So I'll keep you posted on that. And the last thing is we tried to go online with our Medfield transfer station stickers. We hit a few glitches along the way. The company is trying to work out some bugs in the system, and we should be back available to offer them online next week.
But for now, they gotta come to town hall.
For now, they have to come to town hall.
What about somebody who got a ticket last year?
You have to get a new sticker. Yep. Yeah, so if you got it last year, you only paid a prorated fee and you only had it through the end of that year. So they all expire June 30th of this year.
That hasn't, I had several questions on that. It wasn't totally clear to people.
Everybody needs a new transfer station sticker.
Look at your
If you
sticker,
wanna
it'll
use it after
say,
July 1st.
it'll say June 30th, 2019 is your expiration date on your sticker. So, and that's all I have for you this evening.
Next item, the Board of Selectmen action item list. I intended to try to do something with that. I did not. I called it up, but I didn't do anything, so I think we once again push this off unless either of you have done anything to get that list down to a word. We have too much stuff on it. We gotta get it.
We need to get it down.
Whittle
And I need
down.
to look at some of the things. I believe there are some of the things on that list that have already been accomplished. So let me take a quick look and give you an update on that.
Maybe we should just continue to neglect the list and the olds come and do this stuff for us as the action items get worked off. Selectmen report.
So I covered briefly part of our last Affordable Housing Trust Board meeting. We do need a new member, as Jack Wolf has moved to Medway. The warrant committee is not recommending anyone, so if anyone is interested in serving on the Board of Trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust, please send an email to Evelyn or to me. You will have to have a resume and statement of interest to Evelyn either way. So the good news for that is our next meeting is in June. We're not going to meet in July and August, so if you're interested in this committee, you won't have to do anything until September. Also, the last meeting, in addition to the discussion of Rose Bay that I mentioned, we had a meeting with the head of the Norwood Housing Authority and Suzanne Sino about the group home and work on a group home. I think the LifeWorks company we've been working with may or may not have something going forward in Westwood, but it sounds like they're not going to be prioritizing something in Medfield in the near term. So we had a good discussion about other potential options, other potential partners. I think the bottom line is there's a strong interest in helping and supporting the development of a group home in town, but the town and the trust need is a partner to actually run the group home. And so I think Suzanne and her group are going to go back and work on that and come up with some ideas about potential other partners for that. No updates to report on our police collective bargaining situation. We're going to be scheduling another meeting. We've had one meeting. We'll be having another meeting. And then the update on the Dale Street Building Committee. We signed a contract with an OPM?
We signed a
Yeah, we
contract
signed
with
a
an
contract
OPM.
with an OPM for the feasibility phase of the Dale Street project.
We submitted it to MSBA, and we'll hear,
Right,
we'll have
for
a
their
meeting with them so that they can review it and do the selection for that.
And I think you did neglect one thing in your town administrator update. Our new assistant town
I
accountant.
I just made myself a note. I was going to wait till you're finished.
I'm done.
We have hired a replacement for Matt Violet, who left us in January. We now have a new assistant town accountant, budget analyst, and his name is Andrew Foster. And he
Great.
started Monday.
Great.
Pete?
All right, I've got a top 9 list. Medfield Energy Committee, they're looking to try to collaborate with the Development Committee, actually, and have some suggestions about the Medfield State Hospital site. I talked to Todd about that last night, and he said that he's going to invite him to a committee meeting. The Energy Committee still has the question on the LED streetlights, whether or not there are some places where we should have more light in town. And we had talked in the past about in front of the Public Safety Building, and I personally think that we probably should have something at the driveway of the FAF Center, just because it's very dark, and to me it's a little dangerous because people are walking there. I had office hours on Friday. They were well attended. That was good. I attended New in Town's Touch-A-Truck for the first time because the Medfield Foundation Legacy Fund sponsored the bus, the school bus. And the school bus door didn't open all the way, so I got to stand there and hold the door for 2 hours.
So technically, it was Touch-A-Bus for you.
It was Touch-A-Bus for me, yes. The town participates in this because there were probably 8 to 10 DPW vehicles. I kidded the police chief because there was only one police vehicle. Fire department had two vehicles there. Mike Leaders had this really cool looking lift thing that walked around on treads. But I managed to get little stickers on just about everybody in the place. Went to the Lions Gala, which they run to support the Medfield Helping Hands, which is a Medfield Foundation initiative. It used to be the neighborhood brigade where you would do food for people that are in having problems. Went to the Medfield Youth Baseball Softball Parade, and that was a nice time. Went to hear a program that Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke put on at the St. Edward's Church. Got to sit behind Gus and Jean, and it was a really good program, I thought, on Jim McCauley from Riverside Trauma Center talked about raising resilient kids, and he had very concrete proposals on how to do it. Sent me the slides. I'll put those on my blog once I figure out how to make them big enough so you can read them, because they're very small at the moment. There are 3 slides to a page, and so that it's just hard to see. The Medfield Coalition for Suicide Prevention met and has transitioned because Dawn Alcott used to run that, and she's gone now, and Chelsea's taken that over. Medfield Foundation met last night and had its initiative, the grist mill, come and talk about their plans. They had a really, actually, great PowerPoint presentation that they presented to us, and they've got great plans going for it. You know, it's a small area, but it's a very prominent location, and they have just done really neat things with it, and they've got great plans going forward too. So, and then the last thing was the townwide cleanup, and my day in the pit, which is the gravel pit on Noon Hill Road. I didn't know it was called the pit until I got sent there.
If I could just comment one on the LED streetlights. I was talking to Amy Collar, the facilities director, after you sent the email today, and I think the 2 that you're talking about putting in are more town related. My concern at the police station is I would like to see a lighted, the crosswalk where we push the button and the lights flash, because even an additional light at public safety where that crosswalk is, when people are driving down, you don't expect 10:30 at night people to be crossing from one side to the other, and I think there needs to be even more than an additional street light there.
The other thing there, Chris, is that I didn't realize it until we had our energy committee meeting on the second floor in the public safety building. There was a light on the side of the gym at the Dale Street School that really illuminated that whole area. It was so bright that the neighbors complained actually to me, and
Turned it off.
and they I don't know if they turned it off, or I thought they had just shielded it some to keep it from the neighbor's house. But it's
Maybe,
it's not on anymore. It wasn't on that night, at least.
I'll talk
So-
to them. And I know they were changing the hours of it depending on the season, so I'll check with the school department on that. But I'm more concerned about the crossing of the
Yeah,
walkway
because
there.
it's enough back from the North Street that the people would already be turning, and they might be distracted by their turning, so that it's a little bit of a risky, dangerous situation.
And you just don't expect people to be crossing there that late at night.
Mm-hmm.
But then one of the other things after reading your email today, I started thinking about with Amy is that one of the things we need to have a policy on is, now that we own the streetlights, when we have requests to the Board of Selectmen regarding new streetlights, and not necessarily the ones that the town is recommending, but when a neighborhood wants an additional streetlight, what is going to be our policy for, because now that there's an additional cost for the town, obviously for that. So Amy's going to put together what the cost would be so that we can start from there. So she'll have an update for us hopefully at the first meeting in June.
I had thought the general, I don't know if it was a policy or a disposition, but the general disposition / policy was against more streetlights, period. generally.
Always has been.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
think so.
even when we
yeah.
weren't paying for them.
Right.
But now that we are paying for them and we own them, there have been more discussion that we should be putting them back. So I think it's just something you need
Very
to,
expensive under the license agreement if we have to go for an additional location.
right.
The utility can charge all kinds of expenses to the town.
Well, I guess the issue that we talked about at the Energy Committee was that if we're gonna think about any other locations, now is the time to do it, when we've got the installer in town. We've got George Woodbury, our
Mhm.
consultant on, we've paid for already, so.
Yeah,
it
but
just-
they're just changing out within fixtures, they're not changing
Right.
out.
Yeah, not putting in
Correct.
new poles or anything.
Correct.
So I'm
Correct.
trying to get ahead of now that we own them, and there's going to be requests now that we own them to have more installations. So just something to start thinking
The
about.
the Energy Committee is fortunate to have Penny Connor McLean as a member, and she's a vice president of customer relations at Eversource, and so she's been very good to the town of Medfield,
Mm.
and so that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my initial reaction would be if people want new streetlights on their street, the people on the street should pay for them. You know, this is a real safety issue on like a major town thoroughfare that a lot of people use, and there should be one there for safety reasons.
That's our responsibility, yeah.
That would be our
Town
responsibility.
policy, at least reflected in the planning board, going back to when I was on the planning board in the early nineties, was there's no lights in any of the subdivisions.
Yeah,
Except
that's,
where they intersect with existing throughways, and it's a public safety issue.
Yep. Well, the two that I'm suggesting, I think, are
yeah. that's-
Safety
Yeah,
issues.
there are safety ones. That just made me start thinking about some of the other requests that people had been asking about too. And I'd be remiss to Mike if I didn't mention the whole Proposition 2.5 and streetlights, but I'll forward people 100 meetings in which he talked about it, so.
there used to be a lot more lights in town, apparently. Yeah. Ann Thompson can probably tell us how many we took out.
That's it.
That's it, yep.
So I'll start with the town cleanup, because I got a far better assignment. It sounds like, at least it wasn't the pit.
I
It
was
was-
offered,
it
I
was
was
the s-
offered the hospital
It
too,
was the
actually,
state
by the
hospital
way.
property. Well, so a few comment, just observations. One, it was a good thing to do. First observation is Christine was able to fill as many bags just cleaning behind the town hall as I could, given the entire state hospital property to look for trash. So that is double commentary, one on Christine's diligence, and number two, how clean the campus up at the state hospital has become. I was blown away. I started off thinking I was just gonna wander around the main buildings and the campus and try not to step in dog messes. But very quickly figured out, A, there is no significant trash around any of the buildings on the state hospital campus. And even more incredibly, there was no, the entire morning I found 2 dog poops. The entire place was clean. And I think that's a tribute to the building and grounds people, John Thompson. I think it may be also the Whiz Viz Club that I had heard went and did a major cleanup. They were there at the time that I was there, and it was kind of cool watching. The Vizslas are really a neat breed. It was a large group of them. The dogs were having a good time. The people were having a good time. The dogs everywhere were having a good time. I saw more happy dogs up there on that Saturday morning than I think I've seen in a long time. And I was impressed that there were no confrontations so there are a lot of responsible dog owners. There are a lot of receptacles now for dog poop, so I think part of this is it's easier for dog owners to do the right thing without having to hang onto a bag for hours, so that seems to be helping. So that was point one. Point two, when I was looking for a place to start with trash, I went to the Overlook, and I did get trash there. But what was more interesting for any of the environmentalists or the biologists out there is I found more land snails at the Overlook that I haven't, we occasionally will get a land snail in our yard, but they're pretty snails. They're actually pretty cool. But if you want to find land snails, go to the Overlook and look through some of the reeds and things there. I don't know why, but I've never seen a place that had so many land snails. So that
Sounds like a place-making opportunity if I've ever heard one,
Yeah.
Gene. Some land snail
Yep.
art or
One I
land
can't go
snail
to.
something, yes.
That's all right. That's right. And so anyway, if anybody does have motivation to want to clean up at the state hospital, what you have to do is go to all the windbreaks where all the brush and the bushes and the trees are, because the wind blows against that. So I wound up picking up rubbish around the periphery, and that's the only place there was anything significant. So that was pleasant. Second, I got a request from Ann Thompson, and Christine, you may have already heard from her, but you may recall that once a month, Ann would always have a session on Medfield TV with Mike talking about, the goings-on in town. So Christine, this will start with you as a right of first refusal if you want to step in and just do that. However, if you want to spread the burden, then the other thing that Ann mentioned is that we could do a rotation so it's your right of first refusal. We owe Medfield TV an answer for how we're going to staff. I think it's a good thing to do, so there's
I
no
agree.
doubt that we want to do it. You tell us how you want to do it, but if it's for whatever reason makes sense to rotate, you can tell us that's how you want to do it.
Perfect. I'll talk to Ann and work it out.
Okay. I'm sitting in at the Townwide Master Planning Committee meeting that's coming up next Thursday, next week. And that was as a result of the voluminous comments I had on their RFP, so I'll sit down with them. I also enjoyed the opening day parade. It was a smaller group, the weather was worse, but it's kind of one of the cool things that probably goes back years in Medfield that I kind of enjoy it. I think it serves as a physical fitness test for the selectmen to make sure that they can make it a mile down the road and back to their cars, and that's probably an important thing to check once a year. But anyway, that's always a nice thing to do. You talked about the Riverside presentation. I agree that it was an interesting, informative presentation. And enough said. And then the only other point,
Go ahead. I think we're going to make the same point. Go ahead.
the last point that I had is that, just so you guys know, I'm in some informal conversations that are continuing with the gun club and the neighbors of the gun club.
Oh,
And
good. Thank
it's
you.
all, nothing, no action at our level. I think the answer is communication, but if we can figure out a way to work through a few issues, I think it's in everybody's interest to try to get to an agreement there. So that's kind of under the radar.
Great.
And that's all I had.
I actually had one more item I meant to mention. We were looking at dates. If you can just look at your dates for July and August. Due to some vacations and other items, we were looking at July 9th and the 23rd, and August 13th and the 27th.
So I know I can do the 9th, I can't do the 23rd, but
Okay.
don't let that stop you.
What were the August ones, Chris?
August 13th and the 27th. July is typically our slowest month. And then we start to pick up again at the end of August.
Yeah, July 9th is fine.
Okay.
I know I'm on vacation the 23rd.
Okay.
And in my case, the 23rd is fine. The 9th, I'll be out of town. But again, if it's a slow month, I
So
don't
we do
think
it
that's,
July.
I'm down in Texas on the 9th.
I
We'll
could do
hold any
this-
big discussions.
I could do the 2nd.
Yeah, and I can't do the 2nd.
Okay.
I may not be able to do the 2nd. I'm being sworn into the Southern District of New York on 10 a.m. on July 2nd, but,
I'm on vacation on July 2nd, but you're more than welcome to hold it without me.
but I mean, I could do the 16th and the 30th.
Yeah.
I can do the 16th and the 30th, too.
And it looks like I can do August 13th. And August 27th.
Okay. And I'll send out an email just as a reminder
Okay.
if any
Okay.
want to go home and look at your calendars.
We have a little bit of time to figure that one out.
Yep.
Okay. The July one, I don't think it's the end of the world if one of us misses that. Okay.
June is
The 4th and the 18th?
the 4th and the 18th. Yep.
And I think we're at the end of the agenda. Is there anything else?
That's it.
Anything from the floor? Mark, we're good?
Just very quickly.
Just
Just
when we
for
thought
your
we were out.
information, the administration is pushing for a Municipal Modernization Act 2. They're soliciting for input from the communities for other things that need to be done. The discussion on my professional municipal attorney's website focused on enforcement of local bylaws, which was something that last time was scrubbed from the legislation that was proposed. So there's a major push to try and get that back in. So this basically would allow you to lien property for, impose fines, and if they're not paid, then lien property, so.
I heard the governor on the radio this afternoon arguing in favor of changing the two-thirds vote on zoning changes.
That was offered as a, at least as a local option, in some of the stuff that's been pending, so,
That's all I have.
that's all I have.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're watching Medfield TV.